Maria had always lived on the edge of the small desert town, in a modest home that showed the marks of years of struggle. Her house was small, with peeling paint on the walls, and a garden that was more weeds than flowers. Inside, the air always smelled faintly of dust and old wood, a smell that reminded Maria of home, of her mother, and of the quiet life she had always known. Her mother, Rosa, was a hard-working woman with gentle eyes that reflected both love and exhaustion. She had raised Maria and her younger brother, Daniel, almost entirely on her own, after Maria's father had left years ago, seeking fortune in distant cities and never returning. Despite the absence of her father, Rosa never complained aloud. She worked from dawn to dusk, cleaning houses, washing clothes, and tending to a tiny vegetable patch to feed her children. Maria had grown up learning how to work with her hands, how to be patient, and how to find joy in simple things. She would spend mornings helping her mother in the kitchen, peeling potatoes, kneading dough, and making bread from scratch. The afternoons were often spent at the market, selling small handmade goods, woven baskets, embroidered handkerchiefs, and simple bead necklaces she had learned to make from scraps of old fabric. Maria's life was modest, but she took pride in the little she could do to support her family. The townspeople, however, were not kind. Small towns often had a way of noticing differences, and Maria's family was an easy target. While other children wore neat, colorful clothes and had families with steady incomes, Maria's worn dresses and patched shoes drew whispers and judgment. "She's too poor to ever find love," some women said, crossing the street to avoid her. "Who would ever want a girl like that?" the men would murmur, smirking at her as she walked past. Even at school, Maria felt the sting of exclusion. Classmates would invite each other to parties and gatherings, while she remained on the outskirts, quietly observing but never participating. Despite the cruelty and whispered judgments, Maria remained kind and gentle. She never retaliated with harsh words or resentment. She had learned early that bitterness only added weight to a person's heart. Instead, she focused on the small joys she could find each day. The way the sun glimmered on the desert horizon in the early morning, the laughter of Daniel when he chased after a stray chicken, or the rare kindness of a neighbor who offered her a few fresh vegetables from their garden. Maria's sense of hope was fragile, yet persistent. She often dreamed of a life beyond the narrow streets and dusty markets of her town. In her mind, she imagined traveling to places with green fields, sparkling rivers, and skies that seemed endless. She imagined a life where people saw her not for what she lacked, but for who she truly was. Sometimes, late at night, she would sit by the window of her small room, gazing at the stars and whispering quiet prayers, hoping for a chance, a moment, a person who would see her worth. Her brother, Daniel, looked up to her in ways that made her heart ache with both love and responsibility. At only 10 years old, he already knew the hardships of life. He often helped her with chores, carrying heavy baskets of laundry or fetching water from the well. Maria felt protective of him, always trying to shield him from the harshness of the world outside their home. She knew the cruelty of others could shape a person's heart, and she did not want that for him. Despite the struggles, Maria had friends, if they could be called that. There were a few girls who worked alongside her at the market, and while their families were not wealthy either, they shared laughter, small secrets, and the occasional shared meal. These friendships were precious, but fleeting, as circumstances often forced her companions to move, marry, or take jobs far away. Maria learned early that life demanded resilience, patience, and a heart that could endure loneliness without breaking. One bright morning, Maria set out to the market with a basket of fresh bread, hand-sewn pouches, and small trinkets she had crafted in the quiet hours of the night. The sun was already high in the sky, casting golden light over the dusty roads. As she walked, she noticed the familiar faces of townspeople watching her, judging her silently. Some shook their heads with thinly veiled disapproval. Others muttered comments under their breath. Maria kept her chin up and continued walking, knowing that their words had no power over her inner world. Still, a part of her could not ignore the sting of isolation that had been a constant companion since childhood. At the market, Maria arranged her goods neatly on a worn wooden table. She smiled at passing customers, offering polite greetings and helping those who asked. Yet, despite her kindness, many people avoided her, preferring to buy from vendors who had more appealing displays or more fashionable appearances. It was a reminder, she thought, of the invisible barrier that poverty often created. A barrier that prevented people from seeing the true value within a person. A few regular customers stopped by, though, drawn not by the appearance of her table but by the warmth of her demeanor. One elderly woman handed her coins with a kind smile. "You have a good heart, Maria," she said softly. "Never let anyone tell you otherwise." Those words, simple as they were, felt like sunlight breaking through a long, clouded day. Maria thanked her, tucking the coins into her pocket, feeling a rare sense of validation. As the day went on, Maria's thoughts often wandered to the stories she had heard from travelers passing through town. They spoke of places where life was different, where opportunities were abundant, and where kindness and talent were valued over wealth. She clung to these stories like lifelines, imagining a future where she could explore, learn, and perhaps find someone who could love her for who she was, not for what she owned. Yet, reality always pulled her back. After the market, she returned home to help her mother with the evening chores. Rosa's hands were rough with work, and her back ached from years of labor. Maria helped cook dinner, sweep the floors, and tend to the small vegetable garden, finding quiet pride in contributing to her family's survival. Sometimes, as she washed the dishes and listened to the distant sound of the desert wind, she allowed herself to dream of a life where her efforts could lead not just to survival, but to joy, companionship, and love. Despite her dreams, the words of the townspeople echoed in her mind, "Too poor to love." It was a phrase that had followed her like a shadow. At night, she would lie on her thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, asking herself if she would ever be more than what others saw her to be. Her heart longed for love, for understanding, for someone to see the person beneath the worn clothes, beneath the tired hands, beneath the struggles that had shaped her. Maria's resilience, however, was stronger than doubt. Each day, she rose with determination, refusing to let the judgments of others define her. She treated everyone with respect, even those who sneered at her. She found joy in helping her brother, comforting her mother, and working diligently at the market. Her inner strength, quiet as it was, formed a foundation that would later become unshakable. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Maria sat on the small steps outside her home. She watched Daniel chase a stray chicken, laughing freely without a care in the world. Rosa stood nearby, wiping her hands on her apron, her eyes reflecting pride and fatigue. Maria felt a mixture of hope and fear. Hope that one day life would bring her the love she yearned for, and fear that perhaps it never would. Yet she held on to her dreams, tightly and fiercely, knowing that even in a world that often overlooked people like her heart had value, and her life had meaning. The desert wind whispered around her, carrying the scents of sage and dry earth, and Maria felt a quiet resolve settle in her chest. She would not let poverty define her worth. She would not let the cruel whispers of the town steal her hope. Somewhere, beyond the dusty streets and small market stalls, there was a life waiting for her. A life where her kindness, her patience, and her unwavering spirit would be recognized and cherished. And with that thought, she rose, brushing dust from her skirt, and walked back into her modest home. She would face another day, with the same quiet courage she had always carried, holding on to the fragile, precious hope that love, in its purest form, might one day find her. Life in the small desert town continued its quiet rhythm, and Maria had grown accustomed to the long days of work and the occasional sting of gossip. She moved through her life with patience, always tending to her family's needs before her own, always keeping a gentle smile for those who visited her market stall. Yet, as steady as her days were, there was an unspoken longing in her heart, a hope for something more, a life where her spirit could be seen and appreciated for its true worth. She never imagined that the change she longed for would come in the form of someone she would have never expected. It was early morning when Samuel first appeared in town. The wealthy rancher was well known throughout the region for his expansive land, his successful ranching business, and the quiet dignity with which he carried himself. Despite his wealth and status, Samuel was not a man given to arrogance or pretense. He had come to this town on a simple errand, visiting the market to procure supplies for his ranch. The desert wind carried the faint sound of hooves as his horse approached, and he dismounted with practiced ease, brushing dust from his boots. His presence immediately drew the attention of the townspeople, not because of any overt display, but because of the respect and authority that seemed to naturally accompany him. Maria noticed him from the moment she set out her wares. He had a calm, steady gaze, and a posture that suggested both confidence and humility. Unlike others who often looked down on her or ignored her entirely, Samuel's eyes met hers directly. There was no judgment in them, no hint of condescension, only curiosity. Maria felt a small, unanticipated flutter of nervousness. It was rare for anyone outside her circle, let alone someone of such stature, to show her even the slightest interest. As Samuel moved through the market, he observed the variety of goods on display, occasionally nodding politely or making brief inquiries. When he reached Maria's stall, she instinctively straightened, smoothing the fabric of her dress and offering her warmest smile. "Good morning, sir," she said softly, her voice carrying both courtesy and a hint of caution. "Would you like to see some fresh bread, or perhaps a hand-stitched pouch?" Samuel returned her greeting with a gentle nod, his voice calm and sincere. "Good morning. Everything looks lovely. I must say, your display is very neat and inviting." His words were simple, yet they carried a warmth that Maria had rarely encountered. Many had complimented her work before, but those words often felt empty, spoken out of obligation or pity. There was something different in the way Samuel spoke, as if he genuinely saw the care and effort she had put into every item. The interaction, brief as it was, left Maria both flustered and curious. She had learned to expect judgment, indifference, or polite dismissal from strangers. Yet here was someone who acknowledged her work and, more importantly, treated her with respect. She felt a flicker of hope that perhaps, despite her humble life, her efforts and her heart were not invisible after all. Samuel lingered, asking gentle questions about the items on her table. He inquired about the bread she had baked that morning, the patterns she used for her pouches, and the stories behind her handcrafted trinkets. Maria found herself explaining each piece with pride, feeling seen in a way she had not felt in years. Each time she spoke, she noticed Samuel listening intently, nodding in understanding, and occasionally smiling in appreciation. It was not the wealth he possessed that impressed her, but the patience, attentiveness, and genuine interest he displayed. Word began to circulate quietly among the townspeople. A wealthy rancher was speaking with Maria, asking questions, showing interest. Some whispered in disbelief, shaking their heads. "Why would someone like him bother with her?" they muttered. "She's just a poor girl. He deserves someone with status, someone from a good family." Others were more cynical, suggesting that he must have a hidden motive. Yet Maria, absorbed in the conversation, paid little attention. For the first time, she felt that someone might see her for who she truly was, not for the circumstances of her birth. Over the next few days, Samuel returned to the market frequently. Each visit was a gentle ritual, a moment Maria both anticipated and approached with cautious excitement. He asked about her family, her routines, and her small business, always treating her with a respect that never faltered. He never flaunted his wealth, never spoke of the size of his ranch or the luxury of his home. To Maria, it felt as though he was drawn not to what he had, but to what she was. Maria's life began to change subtly. She noticed herself smiling more, feeling lighter in her steps as she moved through the market and completed her daily chores. Even the whispers of the townspeople seemed less significant, as if their judgment no longer had the power to define her worth. She found herself sharing small moments with Samuel, stories of her childhood, her dreams, and the simple joys she found in her daily life. Each conversation, each shared laugh, brought a sense of connection that Maria had long yearned for. At the same time, Samuel began to reveal glimpses of his own life. He spoke of the long hours on his ranch, the challenges of managing a vast property, and the quiet satisfaction of working closely with the land. He shared memories of his childhood, his travels, and the lessons he had learned about integrity, patience, and the value of hard work. Maria listened, fascinated, not by his wealth or success, but by the depth of his experiences and the sincerity with which he recounted them. Their growing friendship did not go unnoticed. Some townspeople began to murmur with disapproval, unable to reconcile the idea of a wealthy man showing interest in a girl they considered too poor to love. Others, however, watched silently, curious to see where this unusual bond might lead. For Maria, the judgment of others was no longer the focus. Her attention was entirely on the man who had entered her life with kindness, curiosity, and a genuine desire to know her. One afternoon, as the sun blazed high over the desert, Samuel invited Maria to walk with him to a nearby orchard at the edge of the market. The path was quiet, lined with cacti and low shrubs, and the air was filled with the scent of dry earth and blooming wildflowers. They walked side by side, exchanging stories and laughter, the noise of the town fading behind them. Maria felt a sense of peace she had rarely known, a feeling of being seen, understood, and accepted. "Maria," Samuel said gently, pausing to pick up a small, fallen blossom, "I have met many people in my life, and yet, there is something about you. Something I cannot quite explain, but it draws me in. You carry yourself with such grace. Even in the face of life's hardships, you are kind, strong, and honest. That is rare in this world." Maria's heart raced, her cheeks flushing with a mixture of surprise and emotion. Words had often failed to capture her worth, and yet here was someone expressing appreciation for her very being. She struggled to find the right words, but finally managed a quiet, "Thank you, sir. I've never had anyone say something like that to me." Samuel smiled warmly. "Call me Samuel," he said. "Please. I want you to know that I do not see the poverty or the difficulties. I see you, Maria. That is what matters most." For Maria, those words were transformative. They were not just compliments. They were a recognition of her life, her struggles, and her heart. For the first time, she began to believe that love and respect could exist beyond the limitations of wealth and status. She realized that perhaps there was someone in this world who could see her true value and cherish it. As days turned into weeks, Samuel and Maria spent more time together, sharing small moments of joy, discovery, and connection. He would bring her books from his travels, showing her worlds beyond the desert town. They would sit under the shade of a large oak tree at the outskirts of the market, exchanging stories, dreams, and quiet laughter. Maria began to see that life could hold surprises, that kindness and love could arrive unexpectedly, even for someone who had been told all her life that she was too poor to love. Despite the growing bond between them, Maria remained cautious. Her past experiences and the persistent whispers of judgment had taught her to be careful with her heart. She feared disappointment, feared that her humble life could never truly intersect with the world Samuel inhabited. Yet, with each conversation, each shared moment, her walls began to soften. She found herself daring to hope, daring to imagine that perhaps, just perhaps, she could be worthy of love, not for what she had, but for who she was. Samuel, in turn, showed patience, never rushing or pressuring her. He understood that trust and affection needed time to grow. He admired her resilience, her humility, and the warmth she radiated despite the hardships she had faced. In Maria, he saw a rare combination of strength and gentleness, a heart that had endured much, yet remained capable of love and kindness. By the end of that season, the people of the town began to notice a subtle change in Maria. She walked with a newfound confidence, her eyes brighter, her smile more frequent. She no longer allowed the whispers of judgment to dictate her mood or sense of self. The bond she had formed with Samuel gave her strength, hope, and a renewed belief in the possibility of love. And so, life continued, with the quiet rhythm of the town persisting around them. But for Maria, each day became a little brighter, each moment a little richer. The arrival of Samuel, the wealthy rancher who saw her not for her poverty but for her heart, marked the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter filled with possibility, recognition, and the tender beginnings of love that neither wealth nor status could define. Maria's life had changed in ways she had never imagined. The quiet mornings at the market, the long afternoons helping her mother, and the evenings spent dreaming under the starlit sky, all of it now carried a subtle excitement she had never known. Samuel's presence had become a constant, gentle rhythm in her days, and though she was cautious with her heart, a sense of hope had begun to bloom within her. For the first time, Maria allowed herself to imagine that perhaps she could be more than the girl the town had whispered about, too poor to love. The connection between Maria and Samuel deepened slowly, like a small flame gradually growing brighter. He would visit her at the market regularly, and sometimes he would come to the edges of town, helping her carry supplies or offering advice on how to improve her small business. Each interaction was simple, yet profound, filled with moments of shared laughter, quiet observation, and gentle encouragement. Maria found herself opening up to him in ways she had never opened up to anyone else. She told him about her childhood, about the long hours she had spent working to help her family survive, and about the small dreams she had tucked away in the corners of her heart. Samuel listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging, never belittling her experiences. He only listened, and in that listening, he made her feel seen and valued. One afternoon, as the sun burned high over the desert, Samuel invited Maria to walk with him to a small, hidden grove near the edge of his ranch. The path was quiet, lined with desert shrubs and wildflowers that swayed gently in the breeze. Maria had never ventured this far from town, and the world outside the narrow streets and dusty markets seemed vast and filled with possibilities. She felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement, her heart beating faster with each step. Samuel walked beside her, offering gentle encouragement and pointing out the simple beauty of the desert landscape, the way the sunlight glimmered on the cacti, the distant hills painted in shades of gold, and the soft whisper of the wind across the sand. As they reached a small clearing, Samuel paused and looked at her, his eyes calm yet intense. "Maria," he said softly, "I know life has not been easy for you. I can see the strength it has taken for you to get this far, and I admire that more than words can express. You carry yourself with a grace that is rare, and a heart that is even rarer." Maria felt her cheeks flush, her throat tightening with emotion. She had never heard such words spoken with sincerity. For years, she had been told that she was unworthy of love, that her poverty made her invisible, that her life could never hold the kind of happiness she longed for. And yet, here was Samuel, a man of wealth and experience, telling her that he valued her for who she truly was. Her heart fluttered, a mixture of disbelief, hope, and a nervous excitement she could barely contain. I don't know what to say," Maria whispered, her voice trembling. "I've never had anyone say something like that to me." "Then let me help you understand," Samuel replied gently. "I don't see the clothes you wear, or the size of your home, or the coins in your pocket. I see you. The real you. The one who works hard, cares deeply, and dreams, despite all the obstacles in her way. That is what matters to me. That is what drew me to you." Maria looked down at her hands, feeling a wave of emotion rise within her. She had spent so long hiding her heart, shielding herself from disappointment and judgment, that the sudden recognition of her worth felt almost overwhelming. She had never allowed herself to believe that someone could see past her circumstances, past the limitations imposed by poverty, and love her for who she truly was. And yet, here was Samuel, offering exactly that. Over the following weeks, their bond continued to strengthen. Samuel encouraged Maria to explore her talents further, suggesting small ways she could expand her business and reach more customers. He brought her books he had collected from his travels, introducing her to stories and ideas that widened her perspective and inspired her imagination. Maria, in turn, shared the simple joys of her life with him: family meals, quiet walks through the market, and the satisfaction of creating something with her own hands. Each interaction was a delicate dance of trust and understanding, slowly dismantling the walls Maria had built around her heart. Despite the growing closeness, Maria remained cautious. She had learned the hard way that life could be unpredictable, and that people often judged her before they truly knew her. Yet, with Samuel, she felt a sense of safety she had never experienced before. He did not rush her. He did not demand anything, and he never treated her as less than an equal. His respect and patience allowed her to open up at her own pace, revealing her hopes, fears, and dreams without fear of judgment. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the desert sky in shades of pink and gold, Samuel invited Maria to sit with him on a small hill overlooking the ranch. They watched in silence as the last light faded, the stars gradually appearing one by one in the vast expanse above. Maria felt a peaceful calm she had rarely known, the kind that comes from being fully seen and accepted. "Maria," Samuel began softly, breaking the comfortable silence, "I want you to know something. I have met many people in my life, but I have never met anyone like you. You have a strength and a kindness that cannot be measured by wealth or status. You are exactly what I need, not because of what you have, but because of who you are." Maria's heart swelled with emotion. She had spent so long believing she was unworthy of love, so long thinking that her poverty made her invisible, that the words felt like a lifeline thrown to her from a distant world. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back, afraid to break the fragile balance of the moment. I don't know if I can believe that," she whispered. "I've been told my whole life that I'm not enough." "You are more than enough, Maria," Samuel replied, his voice gentle but unwavering. "You have been strong through hardships that would have broken many others. You have a heart that cares deeply for your family, your friends, and even strangers. You have a spirit that refuses to give up, even when the world seems cruel. That is why I see you. Not the poverty, not the hardships, but you, the real you." For the first time, Maria allowed herself to truly believe that someone could love her for who she was. She realized that love was not about wealth, social status, or appearances. It was about connection, understanding, and the recognition of the heart beneath the surface. In that moment, she felt a surge of hope, a quiet certainty that perhaps life could bring her the happiness she had always dreamed of. As weeks turned into months, their relationship grew stronger. They spent time together exploring the edges of Samuel's ranch, sharing meals, and discovering common interests and dreams. Samuel encouraged Maria to think beyond the limitations she had placed on herself, helping her to envision a future filled with possibilities. Maria, in turn, shared the beauty of her own world, the simplicity of family life, the joy of creating with her hands, and the quiet satisfaction of overcoming challenges with perseverance and grace. The townspeople began to notice the change in Maria. She walked with newfound confidence, her eyes shining with a quiet determination. She no longer allowed the whispers of judgment to dictate her mood or her sense of self. The bond she had formed with Samuel gave her strength, hope, and a renewed belief in the possibility of love. Even those who had once doubted her began to see that something remarkable was unfolding, a love built on respect, understanding, and genuine admiration. One evening, as they walked along a narrow path leading to a quiet stream near the ranch, Samuel took Maria's hand gently in his own. The gesture was simple, yet it carried a depth of meaning that words could not capture. Maria felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of comfort, trust, and a burgeoning love she had never dared to imagine. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope not just for connection, but for a future where love could be real and enduring. "Maria," Samuel said softly, stopping to look into her eyes, "I want you to know that I do not see your past or your circumstances. I see you, your heart, your spirit, your strength. That is what matters to me. And I want to be by your side, if you will have me." Maria felt a tear slip down her cheek, but this time, it was not of sorrow, it was of relief, of joy, and of the quiet triumph of being seen and valued. She nodded slowly, her heart overflowing with emotion. "Yes, Samuel," she whispered. "I will have you by my side." From that moment, a new chapter began in Maria's life. A chapter filled with trust, hope, and the gentle, transformative power of love. Samuel's presence had not only brought companionship, but also the realization that she was worthy of being cherished, respected, and loved for who she truly was. It was a lesson she had longed for, a truth she had quietly prayed for, and a gift that would shape the rest of her life. And so, Maria's quiet world, once defined by struggle and whispered judgment, began to expand into a life of possibility and hope. The love that had seemed distant and unattainable now stood before her, gentle, patient, and unwavering. With Samuel, she discovered that true love is not about wealth, status, or appearances. It is about recognition, understanding, and the courage to see the heart beneath the surface. Life for Maria had changed in ways she had never imagined. The quiet girl who had once walked through the dusty streets of the town, feeling invisible and judged, now carried herself with a quiet confidence. The whispers of the townspeople still floated around her, but they no longer had the power to affect her spirit. She had found someone who truly saw her, not her clothes, not her home, not her circumstances, but the heart and soul that had always been hers. Samuel had become more than a friend. He was a presence that brought warmth, comfort, and a sense of security that Maria had never known before. Their days together were filled with small, meaningful moments that slowly wove a tapestry of trust and love. Samuel continued to visit her at the market, but now he also invited her to explore the ranch, to walk along the vast stretches of land he had tended for years, and to witness the beauty of life beyond the town she had always known. Maria marveled at the golden fields, the grazing cattle, and the quiet majesty of the desert hills. Everything seemed larger, brighter, and more alive when shared with Samuel. Maria's family noticed the change in her immediately. Her mother, Rosa, watched with pride and relief as Maria smiled more often, spoke more freely, and carried herself with a newfound grace. Daniel, her younger brother, would run alongside her as she walked to the market or helped her carry baskets, laughing more freely than he ever had before. The presence of Samuel had not only brought happiness to Maria, but had also infused her entire family with hope and joy. Samuel, for his part, treated Maria with the same respect and patience he always had. He admired her strength, her humility, and the way she cared for her family despite the hardships she had endured. He encouraged her to dream, to think beyond the limits she had set for herself, and to believe that life could offer more than mere survival. With his guidance and support, Maria began to expand her small business. She crafted more intricate designs, experimented with new ideas, and began selling to visitors who traveled to the ranch. Each sale, each compliment, reminded her that her work had value, that her talents mattered, and that her life could hold beauty and possibility. As their bond deepened, the townspeople could no longer ignore what was happening. Those who had once whispered judgment now watched with a mixture of awe and curiosity. The wealthy rancher and the once quiet girl were frequently seen together walking through the market, exploring the hills, or sharing meals at the edge of the town. People began to realize that their love was genuine, built on respect, understanding, and a recognition of each other's hearts. Yet, Maria paid little attention to the opinions of others. She had learned that true happiness came from the heart, not from the approval of strangers. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, Samuel invited Maria to a quiet spot near the ranch's small pond. The water reflected the colors of the sunset, and the air was filled with the soft chirping of birds returning to their nests. They sat together on a weathered wooden bench, sharing a simple meal of bread, cheese, and fresh fruit. It was a peaceful, intimate moment, one that seemed to stretch time itself. "Maria," Samuel began softly, taking her hand in his, "I want you to know how much you mean to me. From the first day I met you, I saw something extraordinary. I saw strength, kindness, and a heart that is rare in this world. You are not defined by your past, your circumstances, or what others think of you. You are defined by your courage, your love, and the way you treat those around you. That is what matters, and that is what I cherish in you. Maria felt tears welling in her eyes. For so long, she had believed she was unworthy, that love was a luxury reserved for others. And yet, here was Samuel, affirming her worth in a way she had never known. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I never thought anyone could see me like that. I never thought anyone could love me for who I really am." Samuel smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then let me show you every day. Love is not about wealth, appearances, or what the world expects. It's about understanding, trust, and seeing the true heart of a person. And Maria, I see your heart, and I love it." In that moment, Maria felt a sense of peace she had never experienced. She realized that the years of struggle, the whispers of judgment, and the quiet moments of loneliness had all led her to this point. Her life, once defined by hardship, was now filled with hope, love, and the possibility of happiness that she had once thought impossible. As the days passed, their relationship continued to grow. Samuel would bring her gifts that were thoughtful, not extravagant books that inspired her, sketches of the ranch he had drawn, and simple handwritten notes expressing his admiration and care. Maria, in return, shared her world with him, the joy of creating something with her hands, the quiet satisfaction of helping her family, and the small wonders she found in everyday life. Together, they built a life of balance, respect, and shared dreams. Maria also began to notice a change in herself. She walked with confidence, spoke with clarity, and embraced opportunities she would have once shied away from. She became more active in the town, helping neighbors, sharing her knowledge of crafts, and inspiring others with her determination and positivity. The girl who had once been considered too poor to love was now a symbol of resilience, kindness, and hope, a living testament to the power of being seen and valued for one's heart rather than one's possessions. The love between Maria and Samuel was not without challenges. There were moments of doubt, small misunderstandings, and the occasional judgment from those who could not understand their bond. But through it all, they communicated openly, supported each other, and never let outside opinions shake the foundation they had built. Their love was rooted in understanding, respect, and the shared recognition of each other's worth. One afternoon, as they walked through a field of wildflowers near the ranch, Samuel stopped and turned to Maria. "I want you to know that I am serious about the future," he said, his voice steady and full of warmth. "I want to build a life with you, to share in every joy and every challenge. I don't care about wealth, appearances, or what others think. I care about you, your heart, your dreams, and the life we can create together." Maria's heart swelled with emotion. She had spent so long believing that love was out of reach, that her life was limited by her circumstances. And yet, here was Samuel, offering a future filled with partnership, respect, and shared dreams. She felt a quiet certainty settle in her chest, a certainty that she had found someone who would stand by her, value her, and love her unconditionally. "Yes, Samuel," she whispered, her eyes shining with tears of joy. "I want that too. I want to share my life with you, to face every day together, and to build a future filled with love, respect, and happiness." Their commitment to each other marked the beginning of a new chapter, one that was full of possibility, joy, and mutual respect. Together, they faced the challenges of life, celebrated the small victories, and nurtured a love that was built on understanding, patience, and the recognition of true worth. As the seasons changed, Maria and Samuel's love became a quiet legend in the town. People who had once doubted, whispered, or judged began to see that true love is not measured by wealth, status, or appearances, but by the recognition of the heart and the willingness to cherish it fully. Maria, the girl once considered too poor to love, now stood proudly beside Samuel. Not because of wealth or status, but because love had recognized her value long before anyone else had. Years later, Maria and Samuel continued to build a life together that was rich not in material wealth, but in love, understanding, and shared experiences. They traveled to distant lands, explored new ideas, and nurtured a family built on respect and care. Maria never forgot the lessons of her early life, the strength, patience, and resilience that had carried her through hardship, and she instilled those values in every aspect of her life with Samuel. Looking back, Maria often thought of the girl who had once walked through the market with worn dresses and patched shoes, who had listened to whispers that told her she was unworthy of love. She realized that every hardship, every moment of doubt, and every quiet act of perseverance had led her to this moment. And she was grateful not only for the love she had found with Samuel, but for the journey that had shaped her into the strong, kind, and resilient woman she had become. With Samuel by her side, Maria's life became a testament to the power of love that sees beyond appearances, respects the heart, and nurtures the spirit. The girl who had once been dismissed as too poor to love had transformed her world, proving that true love recognizes the soul, embraces imperfections, and celebrates the courage it takes to be oneself. And so, Maria and Samuel lived a life filled with laughter, shared dreams, and the quiet, enduring joy of knowing that they had found in each other exactly what they had longed for. A love that transcended wealth, status, and judgment. A love that was real, steadfast, and deeply cherished.